I'm not used to doing it this angle. We are recording, Madam Chairman.
There we go. Okay, we'll call the meeting to order at 7:05 or something that approximates that. Approval of the agenda, if anybody has any suggestions, additions, deletions.
If I could, I'd like to suggest that we add one more item to the agenda, and that is to have a quick review of the letter that the EDC sent to this committee yesterday.
Last night.
Okay, where would you like to put that on the agenda?
I would like to make it as early as possible because Jen is here and she has from the EDC, this is Jen Burrows. I'm also expecting Linda here tonight, and they both have commitments a little later in the evening. So
No,
if
that
we-
went to all of us yesterday?
No.
I'm
It was
sorry,
decided
put up
last
today.
night.
So we'll put it under new business,
Make that A and then just move A
well,
to B.
assuming that those folks are gonna get here in time, because I don't think we have any minutes to approve, or do we?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so I mean, that would be like,
B.
let's, I'll propose we make that B,
They're half done.
EDC letter. And, well, if push comes to shove, my suggestion would be, if the other folks show up, we can interrupt our discussion of A, let them do their thing, get them out of here so that they can attend to what they need to attend to, and then we can always go back to our discussion. Okay?
Is there a
Can I-
motion on this?
I was just gonna say, can I have a motion to that effect, please?
I'll make a motion to that effect.
Okay, second? All those in favor? That was like the second. Okay, good deal. All right, consideration of designating historic districts on River Road and Route 111, and I have to turn that over to Mr. Redway because he's the only one who knows what he's talking about here.
Don't miss it like that.
It was your idea.
Well, this is something way back, if you recall, when we were going down our list of potential things that we wanted to discuss and consider, was the issue of historic districts. And that was, we put this off for about, 3 months?
At
2
least.
months, yeah. So we decided to put it up early so we would at least get the issue going. And as you can see from these very clear photos, the areas that we were talking about were two potential areas. One was on River Road, and the other was potentially on Route 111, and the other one would, the Durrell's Bridge area, but it's really not very much there. But the Burnham School area was another area that we were thinking about as well. It's a very small area. And the first question that was asked to me by the chairwoman, was, what the hell is a historic district? What is
Frame
that?
it quite that way.
No, you didn't. No, I'm sorry. I was being colorful.
That's okay.
The question is, what is a historic district? You hear a lot of things about historic districts. You hear horror stories about Portland's historic districts, and having been before them, I will agree. Freeport is just as bad. A historic district is anything you want it to be, but the concept of a historic district is recognition of areas of your town that have historic significance, and then determining whether or not that area has some value that's worth bringing to the public knowledge, and perhaps even land use controls to ensure that district is retained in its character. That can be architectural, it can be landscape, it can be any number of things, it can be nothing at all, just saying this is a historic district, and just to recognize that this area has a certain character. And usually it's a character area that's a combination of architecture and landscape. And when I say landscape, it's really land pattern, how land patterns form. And they're usually indicative of a historic land pattern. And that being something that was kind of more of a, let's say, a 19th century, 18th century, or even 20th century pattern. You could say that a classic subdivision from the 50s with 1 acre lots and setbacks directly from the road with cul-de-sacs is a historic landscape. It is. Similarly, what we have are historic landscapes where we have agricultural areas, the areas that were formerly agricultural, we still have open spaces in between, and we have houses of significance in terms of their architectural significance and in terms of their historic significance. And we have several areas in town that do have some historical character. It was posed to me before when I said, where are the historic districts? When I first came here, people said, there aren't any. So, what do you mean? There's no history here. And I think the Historical Society would disagree with that. And I would disagree with it too, because there are some areas in town that are very distinct, and I think River Road is one of them. River Road has a whole series of houses, especially down near the end, down as we get towards the Goffs Millbrook. Let me lay this out for you. Here's Goffs Millbrook right here, which is really technically the boundary of Arundel and Kennebunkport. And this area in here initially has a significant number of homes. They're mainly federal and some Georgian architecture in there. They're significant. Good, typical Georgian and typical federal architecture, which dates back to about the turn of the 18th century into the 19th century. And the people down there have done some things to preserve them. But you also have a whole bunch of other things in there. And you have this, you also have several spatterings of them through this area here, going up to Durrell's Bridge, which is right here. And of course you have like Gary's in here, Gary's Auto. And well, you've also got the MG place down here too, which is an interesting, and it's an interesting place because you've got history on two different levels. He's got a real nice federal house, but he also has some incredible British Leyland vehicles and Triumphs and so forth that he puts there. And it's actually a destination. It's a national destination. People know about that facility and come from all over to go there. So it's kind of an interesting place. But we do have these various areas along River Road, and extends up farther. There's fewer up in this area here where we get into some residential subdivisions, but this is pretty much the biggest area running through here that has significance. Across the river, when we get up to the Townhouse Corner area, which has a lot of significance as well. We also have the old Grange Hall, which is a magnificent piece of architecture, of vernacular architecture, and they've actually recreated some of the shingling patterns that they did at the turn of the century that are pretty good. It's a good example. You also notice there's a pattern also of open space and closed space. In other words, we have open areas of land at various points in here, so you get a real sequential movement as you drive through here of closing, opening, and especially the openings usually are accompanied by a house of historic significance. So the old time art, the old time agriculture that everybody talks about, those patterns, the remnants of those patterns are still in this particular area, and they're pretty good in through this area. So this is one area that we had discussed that staff had recognized as being a potential important area. And the other one we've already had some discussion about, that's on the Route 111 corridor. And also another one would be on certain sections of Thompson Road, although that's changing dramatically right now. What can you do with the historic? Why have a historic district? What's the importance of a historic district? Well, number one, as I said, it's the recognition. It's to say this area is different. It's not your typical part of town. This is an area that development should be aware that there is a certain type of character to the landscape, and there's a certain type of character to the architecture. And how far you want to go with that is really the town's decision. You can go anything from just recognizing it to saying, okay, well, if you're going to put a building in there, you've got to make sure that you have some architecture that's similar to it, or you can say basically we want some sensitivity. If you're buying a house out there and you're going to rehab it, like some sensitivity to what you're doing to it. So you can go everything from being non-restrictive, completely just awareness, all the way up to controlling exactly what kind of renovations are made to a building or to a landscape. It's a question of value to the community, whether these areas have value to the community or whether they don't have value. And in many cases, you'll see these areas disappearing faster and faster and faster as towns develop. Considering that we're still geared to be we're still projected to be the fastest growing town in York County, and that may be just a statistical anomaly, but that's what the projections are for us to continue in the next 10 years to still be one of the fastest growing communities in this area. it might be something worthy for this committee to consider, whether or not those areas are worth some special provisions. Now, do you come up with those special provisions at this particular time? No, but do you recognize them and call for study, or call for the planning board to do some investigation, or call for a historic survey? Because we don't have any here. We never have had a historic survey aside from what the Historic Society has done. The town has never done a historic survey. That's the issue. Question that I would raise is that I think we do have several areas that are significant. I think this is it. We're already discussing the area of the Route 111 corridor, where we basically have an area that you're going to designate by the activities of the group,
Yep.
of the Historic Society. An area that's going to be sort of its own little historic district. I don't know what we would call it. That's going to be just the North Chapel
North Chapel Common.
Common area, North Chapel Common area, which is going to be basically a preservation of vernacular architecture, vernacular farm architecture. But as we get greater and greater development pressure, the issue is going to be there's going to be pressure on these landscapes. There's going to be pressure on these buildings. Are they worth saving? Well, it's up to the community. There's some communities it's really important. Communities like Portland, for instance, that has a rich architectural history. Some small communities like Waterboro, they have historic districts. Hollowell's famous for their historic district. Gets flooded out every spring, but and keep
Part of the
rebuilding.
rural character.
Yes, it is. Yes, this is where the riverboats used to tie up here on Main Street. It's really it's a question of value. And is this a big subject for this committee? Possibly, because we haven't done any real research in it. We don't have a good section on historic resources in the comp plan. But if you're going to be looking at a comp plan and making changes to a comp plan, this is one of the things that we should be looking at. Just as much as looking at the economic development plan and the economic development strategies of the future are part of the comp plan, so are the historic resources. So I want to bring this to your attention and see if there was interest in pursuing investigation of this in this session of the comp plan, or deferring it to another time. When I mean another time, another round of reviewing the comp plan. So there's the quick and dirty.
Well, who would do the research? I mean, you said something about the planning board, but I have to say that right now I think they've got their hands mighty full.
Mm-hmm.
Would the Historic Society be interested in coming up with a list of suggestions?
I would hesitate to say no. I'm sure we would. I don't know quite when we'd squeeze that in. But
Time is always a factor.
we've got a staff of -8 right now. Well, one thing I can throw into the mix, we do have, and I wish I could say the Historic Society did this, but this was done prior to us, and I can't get my notebook open. We do have a list of the oldest homes in Arundel. It's not a complete list, but it's a pretty good list. And I did take the time some ways back to map them,
Well. Wow.
because, again, I have no life, but it was kind of fun. This Old Post Road also has quite a few.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
Look at that pattern. Real cluster down at the bridge. Cluster down at this bridge down here too. Ranging everything from ranging from I was assumed pre-1800.
These are all pre-1900.
Right.
Broken into three.
So you've got basically 17th century or 19th century, 18th century, 19th century, in two periods up to pre-Civil War, post-Civil War, basically. No Victorian, huh? Wow, you said post. Yeah, I think basically up to 20th century. Is that what the 1850 is?
Yeah, we have pre-1800,
Right.
1800, 1850, post-1850, but all prior to 1900.
Okay. Oh.
So-
Nothing after 1900?
This,
No stick styles or anything? I didn't see any.
well, the list we were working from only went to 1896, which is why I stopped at 1900, because I ran out of houses.
That was it. Okay.
Pass that around if you
Well,
want
we
to
don't
take a
have
look.
Queen Anne's.
One question I would have, since other communities have already done these types of things, could we have access to some of the samples of how they approached it?
Yeah. I'll give you verbal, but I'll get you the written as well. The verbal portion, the way you approach this is exactly what you started. The first thing you do is find the architecture, because the architecture is the easiest thing to find. You go back through the records and document the houses. Now, the National Park Service, believe it or not, the National Park Service does this. They're responsible for it, looking at it from a national perspective. They have a form. It's called the Historic Inventory Form. And Historic Inventory Form is a standardized form that goes through a variety of different features that are relevant to the house. You know, the type of foundation, you know, who the potential, what the style was, the age, the condition, you know, any architects have known, any of the historic significance of occupants in the past. And it's a regular form that you do, and you do that survey. And then you do exactly what you did right there. You start mapping and see if you have patterns. Now, the landscape thing, you do the same sort of thing. You would look for landscapes that are typical of those particular eras, and usually they're accompanying the building. You know,
Yeah.
so you look at the pattern of the buildings and the openings and what's around the buildings. You know, obviously that's different here in a rural area than it would be, let's say, in Portland, where Portland's just solid buildings.
Yeah.
Freeport, same thing. Freeport's all very, very tightly put together. And it's when you get into the rural communities like ours, where you get a lot of spread out areas and significant landscapes with it. Downing Road would be another example. You go down Downing Road near the the Downing House down there at the river, and you've got two houses across the street from each other. Very, very classic pattern of agricultural farmhouses, with the farms still around them.
Yeah.
Pretty much intact, not completely. You know, we've got some subdivisions down there and so forth, but you know, you look around and you start seeing these patterns, and you just map them. And then what do you do from that? Well, it's all up to the town. What do you want to do about that? You have the power, the police power, to be able to do whatever you want to do. Various towns do, as I said, they regulate, they provide regulation, or they just provide technical advice. It all depends on the character of the town. For towns that are under a lot of threat, for towns in which people are changing the architecture, we're ripping it apart, you know, pulling off all the fascia boards, all the barge boards, all the stuff that might be the character of the building. You know, those towns usually say, wait a second, before you do that, you need to get a permit from us. You know, that can be very intrusive.
Yeah, and that's part of what concerns me.
Yeah.
You know,
I think we all feel that way.
Yeah, I've had a friend who owned a home on Main Street in Goodwin's Mills, and basically, you know, she couldn't put up certain types of blinds because it violated the character of the house. So, you know, she froze to death in the winter because she had one of those houses, and you know that would be a big issue for, I think, a lot of folks.
Yes, it would, and I
Yeah.
empathize with that because I've been victim of that myself.
Yeah.
being an owner of
Especially since
17,
it's so
50
spread
home
out.
house.
Correct.
Yeah.
That's really spread out.
Yeah, out there, yeah. We have more urban concentrations down here. I was mentioning this area down here because we've got a lot of historical, you know, we have a much more tighter village setting down in this area here than we do, let's say, out this direction, on River Road. And an example, we have several, and I think they're probably going to be on there, we have several, I would say, early 1800s that are right in the middle of River Road. They have subdivisions all around them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't mind recognizing them, but I'm not sure that as a town we're prepared to. Actually, I should say I know that as a town, I don't envision anything more than recognizing them or documenting them.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
trying to put any types of restrictions on them.
And I think in a lot of cases the damage has been done, quote unquote.
Around
Yeah.
it.
Well, not only around them, but even within the house. I mean, my house is 1820. The outside could be relatively easily restored to its original, depending upon which owner, you know, how far back original goes, but,
Right.
you know, pre-us,
Right.
without too much difficulty. But when we bought it, the inside was already mostly destroyed.
Yeah.
Because we went through a serious, we're going to sell the house, so we're going to tear out anything that looks interesting and put up paneling So I have some original woodwork, and I have 2 original tin ceilings and floors, but, you know, a lot of it's gone.
Yeah, and
So-
usually it pertains to exterior.
Yeah.
There aren't a lot of history. I mean, you get into Williamsburg, you get into Brooklyn Heights, you get into a few places where you get inside. Most historic districts don't go inside.
Kennebunk does. Kennebunk Historical.
They
Summer-
go inside?
Summer Street is inside too.
Holy
Yeah.
mackerel! Wow, that's intrusive.
That's what I
But-
said too. I mean, I've seen that, good, bad, and ugly too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it's
Yeah.
2 sides to the coin, but as has been, I guess, I'll speak for myself, my theme right along, private property rights come first. You know, don't tell somebody what they can do with their property, because they're paying for it. And the other part of this is that if you're being requested, or, you know, if there's a demand to reach a certain standard, well, who's gonna pay for that? You know, maybe I would love to do it, but I can't afford it.
Mhm.
So,
And then you always get into these wars like Saco and, oh, everything's in the historic district, unless we wanna do something.
well, yeah, yes, that's,
And then whatever should have been historic goes away because
yeah.
they wanted to do something.
I mean, you know, we certainly have a substantial number of
You do.
homes that could be recognized, and, you know, maybe through recognition, have people more aware of the potential value of preserving some of this. But that's a big step down from enforcement.
Yeah, it is, but it's a step up from where we are now. And I guess that's the point, because everybody recognizes Summer Street. Here's a good example.
Yeah.
I mean, you've got magnificent architecture there, American architecture, very unusual because of the quality and the size, the sheer size and the quality of the architecture in there. Some of those are national, they're all National Register stuff. You get into Arundel, we're getting into more vernacular. We're not going to have Tony Wren houses here.
There'll be one of these going away soon.
Yeah. So the issue is there more of an educational or an appreciation standpoint, saying, look, the vernacular stuff has value. It does have value. Now, you know, it doesn't have value if you're a homeowner freezing to death and you need to rip it apart in order to insulate it. I know this personally. But they do have value to the community, they have value to the actual homeowner as well. And right now, aside from the efforts of a private organization, which is a historic society, we don't have any real effort to look at and preserve or educate our public about the resources that they themselves own. Now, they can do whatever they want, obviously, and I think that is the Arundel way, but education is, I think, a key thing because it really does pull out. It steps it up a notch. People, when they know what they've got, they appreciate a lot more. If you know you've got something significant, then you might look at it a different way and approach how you're going to remodel it, or approach how you're going to split off the land in a totally different way.
One of the things the Historical Society did, there's a form on the back of one of those pages, is we tried to get some of the people who have these older homes to give us information that they had in their possession, or if they had photographs. We got some response, very little response, but I can't say that we put 100% effort into it either, because again, we are a small group
Right.
struggling to stay afloat.
Right.
So, but and that's something that could be followed through on in a number of ways.
We also can apply for grants for that work if you want. There's not a lot, but there are interns in various, believe it or not, there's grant programs in historic preservation. And they're always looking for some place to do a project. And doing the inventory is, I've got 2 friends in that field who, that's how they got started. They did inventories of historic structures using the National Park Service criteria, and they followed it. They did the reviews, presented it to the community, and followed it with up in this place in Concord, and they're there today. And as a result of that work, these communities did eventually put in historic districts because the residents said, we've got some value here. There's value in my house. Anytime you have value in your house, you want to extol that, except when the assessor comes around. But you do when you talk to the real estate agent, or you talk to the bank, you want to talk about the value of your house. And this is an element of value that people often overlook, especially in Maine. Not because Mainers, don't appreciate it, but because a lot of these houses are tough to live in. They've got to be modified. deleted it, so. But I felt it was incumbent upon me to bring up this subject. I didn't put in a lot of effort into it because I wasn't sure exactly where you folks wanted to go with this. I wasn't gonna put in a lot of effort if it was gonna be wasted. But it's something I think a historic resources survey would be a good idea to do, part of an ongoing part of it, updating the comp plan, whether we can do it in a timely fashion. Given all our other responsibilities that we've got to do right now, I doubt that we could do it in a timely fashion, at least before June. Certainly can't do that.
We're not gonna do much before June,
Yeah.
so, but as a long-range thing,
Yeah.
I don't see the time as anything to consider as a negative. You know, if it's something needs doing, we can do it.
Okay. All right.
But
So-
how does everybody else feel?
Yeah.
Well, I feel it should be addressed. You know, I think it is important for a town. And I also feel that, you know, you don't want to put a whole lot of restrictions on people. I think we all feel that way. But to investigate it, I think that, you know.
I think to have an inventory and know where they are and
Mhm.
Yeah,
to make sure people know, that's
Yeah.
one thing. But I would hate to get, like, Portland or Freeport or Saucon done. I think it's,
That's a big jump to go from there
well, that,
to
and
Portland.
I don't, you know, in some of those cases, you know, they might say value of the house, but you can talk to some of those people, they consider it to be devaluing their house because people really don't want to buy something that they can't change. Can't change the color, you can't.
Unless they specifically want a historic house. I mean, there is
Right.
that market.
Yes.
But,
In
even
Portland,
if
you'll
you-
find that because those houses have been around long enough and been under regulation.
But working with some of the girls up there, even those that want the historical house,
Mhm.
there are still some restrictions within that even they have a hard time with.
Mhm.
Because your wallpaper has to be from within a certain period and your colors have to be, Portland's like way,
Oh, yes, no, Portland's the extreme.
yes.
It's sort of
So-
like Summer Street in Kennewick, you know, it is the absolute extreme and not the norm by any stretch of the imagination. I mean, I tell you what the reveal is on your finials, you know, it's just too much. Spacing on your balusters and color. Yes, color. Hey, Nantucket has it, but they have, all of Nantucket's got a palette of colors, you get to pick from that palette of colors, that's it. That's all you can do. And the architecture, no, California, we have, you know, in Nantucket, they say we have 4 or 5 California homes and that will never happen again. Those are extremes. Those are extremes. And sometimes they give historic preservation a bad name. But historic preservation's had a good name because of what it's done for many downtowns around the country. It's actually revitalized downtowns. And quite honestly, when Ronald Reagan put in the 20% tax credit for historic preservation of commercial buildings, it caused a renaissance in America. It really did. That's when you got all the downtown revitalization movement really moving, was because it made financial sense. Renovate my house, you know, in a way that's sensitive but not debilitating. And people say, all developers and individual property owners said, this makes sense. This makes complete sense. From a financial standpoint, this isn't a burden anymore. This, okay, I'll play. And unfortunately, those credits have sunsetted. There's still some credits, but it's not the same as it was before. We'll have to see them come back. But yeah, I think I would agree if this committee wants to pursue that, staff will in fact pursue that. It's a lesser significance in our workload. It's going to be back the burner, but it's something that had to be addressed, and I felt we had to address it at some point. I wanted to get your feel on it. I wasn't going to pursue any resources or a lot of time into it if this committee was dead set against it.
I don't think anybody's dead set against it, but I think the feeling is that this
Well,
is
with
something which
sensitivity.
could just add more problems to what we've got. I would like to see our concentration right now being on getting this rezoning thing done and through the town meeting. I've got a feeling that if we propose historic districts on top of everything else that's being proposed, it's going to be one more thing to muddy up the waters and get people worked up against. I think it's a good idea, but I prefer myself to see it done after we get all of the rezoning done. And at that time, we'd also have a little more time to devote to it without jeopardizing stuff that I personally think is probably more important.
I agree with you with one little exception.
Picky.
Sorry. And that it's a very small exception. It could very well be that some of this research would influence some of the boundaries of the zoning. So having this sort of, again, on the back burner, not a priority, but just for our own purposes, saying, okay, this is an area that looks like it's going to be interesting. Let's be sensitive to that when we talk about other things. So let's kind of keep this rolling, but not taking away from the main thrust, which is what you described.
I would hate to see the rest of this stuff be delayed because we're concerned about a zoning line.
I agree with you. It shouldn't be, and it can't be.
Agreed, I feel, I think it's worth looking into, but
Yeah.
I feel that we really need to do do the historical inventory first, and that's not gonna be anything that's gonna be quick to be done. So,
No, but as we look
kind
at.
of keep things in mind of that map and where some of the
Yeah.
things are when we're going over this. That's fine and great, but, I think we got some other steps that need to be done before we can really
Yep.
kind of officially, do any designations or propose any designations.
All right, and it may be that all we end up doing is just, as Pat said, recognizing that these are areas of historic value and putting that out as information. So, that may be as far as it goes.
Yeah,
So,
and it certainly should be in the comp plan, because it is one of the resources that we have in the community. Comp plans are supposed to have an inventory of all the resources in the community. And historic resources and scenic resources are two such resources that need to be in the comp plan and are part of the consideration when you do zoning, or in your next phase, which if we do this linearly, which we're not.
Right.
But, yeah, I did want to bring it up because it is a glaring omission from our comp plan, and needs to be, there's an opportunity to address it, and the issue is when. And I think I've heard when, but I've also heard that it's not something that should be abandoned. So resource inventory should be pursued, but it's not a priority at this point.
I think we should recognize it.
Yep.
Yeah.
No,
Well, that-
we'll get those
I think we
wheels
have to
going
be
too.
sensitive to it as we look at zoning
Yeah.
too, to make sure we don't trump on something.
And the other thing, and I know for those of you who haven't done this before, it's difficult to grasp, but the comp plan, I don't think it's ever going to be a finished document. We address problems, we solve those problems, and then we move on to the next section of problems. So if we can nail down the business districts and get them up and running, then we can move on to other things, including this. So it's not as though we have to have 1,000 things ready for this June or the next June or the one after that. We can address this in sections because it's kind of a living document, which I think, and correct me if I'm wrong, there are some communities that have a comprehensive plan which is basically on the shelf to keep that section of the shelf from becoming dusty.
It's in compliance with the OCP requirements that came out in 1993.
Right. We have addressed the comp plan as much more of a living document because we keep going back and tweaking it and making it suit the needs of the community.
And there are many communities that consider the comp plan to be an annoyance. And it's meeting state requirements, and that's it. This is a community that takes its comp plan a little more seriously. And that's fine, because as I said, every community is different. This community says the comp plan should be a real guide to future policy making. And it's good planning to do that, quite frankly. So you're right, there's never an end to comp planning. So you guys have a permanent job. How's that?
Depressing.
Very.
All right.
I'll still be seeing you when I'm 90.
Yeah.
Hopefully, we'll have the ADA problem gone here, so we don't have to, put a stair chair.
No, I'll still be doing the stairs. I'll probably
Okay.
still be riding my bike.
Okay, terrific, good.
Hopefully we'll have another building.
Yes, sir.
I'd like to make a motion that at this time we kind of segue off of this into the EDC.
Okay, well, I was kind of under the impression we were kind of done with this anyway, but yes, it sounds like. I don't know that we need a motion, let's just recognize the EDC and you're up.
This is Linda Zook and Jen Burrows from the EDC. The EDC drafted a letter to this committee last night because of our concern that the process that we're in of rezoning seems to be taking forever. Back about a year and a half ago, we had what would you call it, an open house with a lot of the residents from Townhouse Corner. We had a second meeting with the residents down at Townhouse Corner over a year ago. We had no objections to rezoning that area from any of the residents that showed up at our meeting. And here we are over a year later, and we can't even tell them at this point when anything is going to change. We have people who want that area rezoned to accommodate businesses. We have businesses that are ready to go down there. And this letter was drafted in the hopes that this committee could do something to move the Townhouse Corner District problem ahead and hopefully get it in front of the voters this June. I don't know if it's doable, but I assume everybody has had a copy of the letter. If you have any questions about the situation, Linda and Jen are very familiar with it, and I'm sure they would be glad to answer any questions.
Well, I don't have an issue.
One thing that was mentioned at one of our meetings, a couple of months ago, was the possibility that instead of trying to do this rezoning as one great big town-wide project, was to possibly approach it in a section-by-section manner. Personally, I think that would be a very good idea because we could take some of the business zones, complete this process that we're going through, and be sure to get it to the town meeting this summer. My fear is that going at it the way we are going at it now, we started meeting last August, it's now February, and I have real concerns that we're going to be able to do this whole town-wide deal by this summer. So my personal feeling is if there's any way that this town-wide project could be split up into different zones like the Townhouse Corner, the DB1, DB2, the Gateway District up on the north end of Route 1, and let's try to get completion on some of these areas, and maybe next year worry about some of the residential areas or the Route 111 area. I think it would be a much more effective way to go. But,
I don't think our intent was ever to do a town-wide change in the comprehensive plan. That what you just described is what, at least I was hoping to get done for June town meeting.
okay.
The focus was on these business districts to get that up and running, because if the goal here is to change the nature of the tax base, and we wait another 10 years to get our zoning straightened out, that's another decade lost. So I think DB1, DB2, Townhouse Corners, and the Gateway District, because it's relatively small, those are certainly easy, ready to go. We just need to meet with the townspeople, have public hearings. And then the next step is going to be to have the planning board go from there and get that piece ready. But in terms of taking our piece to town meeting in June, I don't see a problem with that.
But remember, our taking our piece to town meeting doesn't change. It changes the expectation of what's going to happen in those areas, but it doesn't change the zoning till the planning board completes that zoning,
Right.
and that goes to town meeting.
Exactly, and what we're
Right,
talking
right.
about is trying to get this through the planning board and to a town meeting this summer. What?
Basically, we're asking for the section of the townhouse, M4,
Yep.
for you to allow the planning board, I think is the next step, right, to do what they
I think
need
so.
to for that, so that we can make sure that at least one of these items gets on the June ballot.
Well, in effect, we did that with the last joint meeting. We presented the DB1, DB2, M1, M2, M3, M4, M5 to the planning board, and they said we can basically work with this.
Okay.
All right. Now, when we meet with the people in DB2, for example, we might have to tweak a little language.
Right. But you
But-
still have to have public forums with the DB, most of these districts.
Which would be done jointly with the planning board. So that's
Right.
not duplication of effort.
Right, but as of this time, we did our due diligence and we've already had the public forums on the townhouse corner. I just,
Right.
if
We don't need
I-
to do that again.
Okay, we just didn't want that being held up. If
No, but
Yeah, those two.
from what I understand, the sticking point here is going to be how ready the planning board is to have ordinance written to reflect what we are asking in the comprehensive plan. Because, I mean, it's really a two-step process. We could take the comprehensive plan language to town meeting in June, have everybody in town vote, yes, we like all of this, no problem. But if the ordinance isn't written, you still can't go anywhere. So the
Right,
planning
Right,
board,
but that's why we want
the plan,
done. We want the
They
ordinance
want
written
this
for
section
this
done.
June.
In light of the fact that the meetings have been held twice with the residents of Townhouse Corner, what would we have to do to get this through the planning board so we can at least say, there's one zone, we've put it to bed, it's ready for the voters.
You have
Now
to
let's
take that to the
concentrate on
planning
DB1, DB2.
where is the planning board with regards to ordinance for Townhouse Corner District?
There's been one draft already done, that was done 2 years ago. It's gonna have to be completely reformatted though, because it's in a format that we were gonna take to the new zoning format. We're not gonna be able to do that. We're gonna have to put this new zoning format aside and put it in the old zoning format. Because we're not gonna have enough time to put everything in the new zoning format without everything else being done, quite frankly.
Everything else being what?
Residential, performance standards, language, definitions. Planning board's been slugging away at it, but they haven't been really motivated. to
But
slug
why
it.
do we have to, I guess I have to ask, why do we have to do the residential piece now? If the business districts are the ones that right now are being held back, why is that being held back by residential standards and residential changes? Why can't those be done at two different times?
Well, they can. They can. I mean, right now, if this committee votes to adopt the language in the borders, remember the borders of this district and forward into the planning board can work. The planning board's already written DB1. They've got most of DB2 written. You know, we've got one draft of Townhouse Corner that's done. Gateway is going to be DB1 anyways. You know, it'll just, planning board doesn't like the idea of having a separate district, but this committee should say, have a separate district, okay?
Right.
We're going to make a separate
over it.
district. Get over it, and that, you know, I'm sorry you don't like that many zones, but this committee says we're going to have another zone there. We're going to make it a separate zone. So, which is good, because frankly, there's some differences between DB1
Well, yeah.
and the gateway. There's
Yeah.
big differences between them, but the planning board's stuck on not having too many zones. So what I think we need from, the planning board needs to move forward from you is a official declaration that you're adopting the language of M1 through 5. And you've agreed to that, but you haven't made a formal motion. And then the boundaries, you know, I think the boundaries of DB2 are amorphous right now because, you know, of concerns by this board of what the property owner's
Right.
response is gonna be. And since we haven't had any property owner response, since they haven't come out, that's one of the agenda items to discuss is how much longer are we gonna wait for the DB2 people to get back to us? And
Right.
what are we gonna do to expedite their input, since that was a criteria, both of this committee and of the planning board to have the DB2. Property owners weigh in before the ordinance is written.
However, if we said, okay, DB2 is basically going to look like this,
Right.
and tell that to the planning board, pending a landowner who comes along and says, well, no, DB2, I'd really like it to look like this, they can still do 99% of their work and do a last little carve out or carve in on the map as a last minute change. So we're really not in a position of holding them up from doing anything they need to do.
But I would ask you to do this. I would ask you to make a formal declaration of adopting that language and the basic boundaries, because you saw what happened at that public hearing where you had one planning board member said, well, somebody's in an objection, let's call the whole thing off. And I can't work in that context.
Okay.
Okay? So if you basically say, okay, guys, we're going to have, this is what our language is that we're going to propose. If you're going to write the ordinance so that both of these things are passed at June town meeting, this is what we said. This is what we're going to write. This is what we're going to propose. Write your ordinance in accordance with this. Then that variable that the planning board started playing with at the last meeting goes away.
Well, that's easy.
Okay? So I would encourage this body to, let's have some boundaries now, so I can get the planning board back on track and not waiting for.
As I recall, the only question we had left was whether we should take that townhouse corner district and extend it up Log Cabin Road some distance. Was that correct?
That question did come up. In light of the fact that we've already had 2 meetings with the townhouse corner people, could I suggest, let's stick with what we've got, let's finalize it, and let's
Okay.
get something through this summer so that we can say we've done something, finally.
But
Rather
understand,
than-
even though we've had meetings with them,
Yeah.
there still has to be, you might have had 2 meetings with them, but it was with EDC. As part of this process, there still has to be,
EDC did it at the request of the planning
Planning
board.
board.
right,
We
but,
didn't come up with this idea on our own.
right,
No.
but all of these changes require,
There still has to be a public hearing.
there still has to be a public hearing.
Yeah.
There is no getting around the public hearing once.
However, don't confuse the public hearing
Yeah.
with what we're doing. DB2 is a little special because we're targeting a finite number of landowners and saying we're going to completely change what your land is zoned at. So that's a come to our party, let's talk about your land in particular. That's different than a public hearing.
Yeah.
The public hearing is much more generic. So we say, okay, we're going to have a public hearing tonight on all 5 of these zones. Anybody who's interested, come say what you want to say. So it's not like we're going to rehash the townhouse corners landowners
Right.
meetings again.
And
Oh,
we have, as an EDC, we have no fear of that because there's no objection to them that way. I understand the process that you have to have it. The only thing that we're going through right now is that we're all just like you, trying to plan for the future. However, we're shutting down what is available right now.
Yep.
You know, put your sewer in, put all your imaginary supplies you want all over town, but we're stopping business, small business, that wants to go there.
Yep.
And we don't have any neighborhood objections about it. So we're losing income, business income, to help us offset our residential taxes. We have a school budget coming up. It's going to come at us again.
Yep.
We need to start putting these things in motion. It's been over almost 1.5 years of waiting for this because we were told that we have to go through the comprehensive plan, and we just cannot financially afford to do this anymore. I mean, we're at this point, and so that's why when we're coming to you saying, you know, have your public meeting, do what you need to do, because there's no there's no one down there that's going to say anything against
Well,
it.
you know, we also, back in, was it November vote, we did a newsletter. We handed out a newsletter to every voter that came in, and it was stated on there about the Townhouse Corner District and what was needed. Again, there wasn't really anybody coming to
Opposing
town,
it, yeah.
knocking on the door saying, what is going on here, what are they gonna do? And then it stopped. And I just feel like the loss of momentum that we're seeing right now is people is gonna start losing interest and faith in what the EDC is doing. You know, we came out all gung-ho that we're gonna make all these great changes, and all of a sudden the town's saying, well, what are they doing? They haven't done nothing. You know, they tried to get a zip code change, and that's it. You know what I mean? It's like
Yeah, but
everything.
that's a whole different.
Well, no, but I'm just
Nobody
saying.
can hold you accountable
I know.
for that.
Oh, I know. But I'm just saying.
No, but this
We
one-
want to
this one's
see
a pretty
momentum
No
get
brainer.
build back up so that people can get excited about what we're doing. We got the economic development plan that's coming up. We want people to get involved in it. we just want people to see that things are changing, things are moving. And
Not
I
only
think,
that, but we need the business
yeah,
income.
and we need the business.
Yeah, and I would
Bottom line.
suggest too that this kind of letter, that you address it maybe a little stronger to the planning board if we want it done. Because we can tell them what we want there, but if they don't
You
get
mean the
the
letter
ord-
we did last night?
Yeah, because if we can change it all we want, and I don't have any objections to changing it, I think it's pretty much a no-brainer for me, but I think that our changing it in the comp plan without making sure that the planning board finishes their piece in time to do at the same time defeats the purpose. I mean, because one is changed and the other one's still waiting.
Well, but according to
Well-
Ted, there's no reason why, if we give them the language pretty much right now,
Right.
they can't get their job done by June.
But
So
it
let's-
also, but I'm
do it.
also slightly concerned where all these other districts are coming into play as well. I mean, okay, something gets held up because of DB1, DB2, or the Gateway. To all of a sudden now it's Townhouse Corner District put back on hold, and that means another year.
I mean, the
You know what I'm
EDC
saying? I think it's important that no matter what, at least one or two of these districts need to get on the ballot for June. It's gotta be a priority.
Well, I think the intent is to get all
All
of
of
these.
them.
Oh, I understand that. And I would like to see that all happen, but what I'm saying is if it doesn't, at least make sure a couple or one gets on there.
I think
2,
what
3.
our concern is that normally with land use regulations, we vote on land use regulations as a package.
Yeah.
And I think the concern is if there's a lot of, I'm just using this hypothetical. If there's a lot of pushback in regards to DB2, and they don't want to pass it because of the changes in DB2, then we've lost Townhouse Corner.
Yeah.
So we,
You can't do ordinances,
Broken up,
in little
maybe.
pieces.
That's
I
what I
can't do it. I mean, that's why we have a problem. That's why things don't fit. It's because we pass little pieces here and there, and then they don't fit, and then they blow up. And that's what I don't want. This
no,
needs to
I'm
go
saying
as a
that's your
unit.
concern.
This needs to go as a unit.
It has to go as
It
a
has
unit?
Should go as a unit.
Should or is
Yeah.
it doesn't have to?
I agree with.
I'm,
with
I'm,
Linda.
I'm concerned that it might be too much for and if they don't have enough time to, if you,
I mean, we
you
waited
could
a year and a
could
half.
lose it just because somebody doesn't know what's happening to DB1.
Can I,
That could happen, but
I-
that
and I-
happens
and I-
in every single zoning.
Yeah, but I don't
ordinance.
think it's necessary based on what, I mean,
Well, then you
what
just
we
lose
know.
out on more income coming in.
You know, I just-
help
I
our
lose
tax
it in the
dollars.
other districts, which have even more potential too. They have
You've
a
got
greater,
no one wanting to
greater-
go in DB1 right now.
What? I've got people waiting to go in DB1.
okay, the chairman steps in before the fight breaks out.
Right.
Now,
Yeah.
I have a couple of, I don't know whether they're questions or what they are, but if it's physically possible for the planning board to put together the appropriate ordinance language
Yeah.
for M1 through 5
Yeah.
to be ready for town meeting, that's one issue.
Right.
If hypothetically they could only get done DB1, DB2 in the Townhouse Corner District, because they're essentially done, then I don't see any reason why we couldn't take that to town meeting and then worry about the other 2 districts or 82 districts later. Okay, so the
DB1 and DB2 are one unit basically, and the only thing that's left on that is boundaries and property owners.
right.
Um,
So that
That's done.
those 3, M1, M2, M4,
right,
look doable.
and so does Gateway. There's nothing to Gateway.
Okay. So if that's what could be taken to town meeting, that would solve your problem, and it would also
Right.
make sense,
Right.
okay, from a planning board standpoint. Now, my second thing, and I had brought this up a while back, was the idea of, and I think this is part of what you were addressing in terms of pushback, having them as separate warrant articles. Now, I don't know that that's a good idea or a bad idea, but if it looked to us like there was some danger of one passing and the other not, then we say, okay, warrant article 1 is Townhouse Corner. It goes, it doesn't. A warrant article 2 is the DB1, DB2 package. It goes or it doesn't. So if for some, oh, and then, you know, gateway as a third one. It doesn't change the ordinance language. It just means that
The
you
different
have,
one.
you have one zone that's set and ready to go, and another one that the townspeople weren't wild about and needed to be tweaked.
What zone do we have that the townspeople aren't wild about?
I don't know. Theoretically.
You haven't had the public forums for the other.
Ideally, hopefully,
I've had a lot of public forums on DB one and two.
okay.
I've had those a lot.
Ideally, if we've done
More
our
than
job,
we did on Townhouse.
if we've done our job correctly, and if the planning board does its job correctly, we should have a good product that the townspeople would be very happy with for all of those districts. And if we feel comfortable with that, then that's how we should approach it. But if if as you get to the end, this, we're not too sure we're gonna go for this, we could separate them out as separate warrant articles. I know that doesn't make you happy.
It makes me very unhappy.
I know it does, but it's not my job to make you happy.
It's unusual and it's disjointed.
Well,
Remember
why
you're in a
is-
row.
One piece, because they're integrated, and if one piece falls out, it's like taking the carburetor out of the car.
Oh, no, it's
One piece
not.
falls out.
You know,
Well,
Chad, how is it, how is
I
it,
don't know,
when we were
Because I'm
talking
gonna
about,
have to do a performance standards section that's not set. It was
Oh.
okay when it's DB one in its own ordinance. It's okay when it's DB two or it's townhouse in its own separate ordinance. But I'm not gonna be able to do all that because we don't have all the performance standards and the residential done. So I'm gonna have to go in the old format, which means I'm gonna have to come up with integrating those pieces of performance standards into the performance standards.
But
No,
I'm
I-
confused. What
I
happened?
I
Why do we
disagree
have
with you. I
performance
think it's a
standards?
matter of thinking outside the usual town planner box. All right,
How so?
well,
Tell me the format.
remember the conversation we had in terms of looking at the town as neighborhoods?
Yeah,
So you say, okay, you're gonna move into this neighborhood, which in this case we'll say is a townhouse corner district.
right.
Here's the stuff you need to know.
Yeah,
That's
but
it.
but see, that format doesn't exist.
But it will when you write it for that district, and that's all
But I
it will
can't-
apply to. Yes,
Right,
you can.
but I can't put it into this ordinance, because that's not how this ordinance is set up. That's the new ordinance, that the new format is that, but it hasn't been passed yet.
Yeah, but you can break out a section and say this is gonna go by a new ordinance, it's not gonna go by the old ordinance.
Okay, fine.
I understand
It's a-
why it makes all your hair stand on end. I really do. But
You don't know.
yes, I do. However, I
don't.
continue to reject the word can't. If this is what we need to make some progress in this town, then
Oh, no, I think we could.
then let's
I just
just-
want to do it as a unit.
let's
It's
just,
just easier for me to put it together as a unit.
yes, it may
It's
be
just
easier.
much, well, it's time's the factor here, guys. I mean, I are really up against the wall on time here.
Chad,
And so with the fastest way that I can get this done
yeah, but
is what matters.
wait, time is a factor, and this whole thing started a year and a half, almost 2 years ago,
Right.
and we were
But
rewriting all these other ordinances when we were doing the townhouse, and we were going to go to town vote with just that one section, that one ordinance.
No.
We weren't. We were going to wait for this the whole time. Not.
No, the whole thing, we were gonna go with the whole smash at
No,
once.
we weren't. Because we weren't talking about that 2 years ago.
Well, there's no way we could have done it, because that format doesn't even fit that format. It doesn't even fit what we've got right now.
What residential standards are we waiting for?
I'm not waiting for it, they were gonna address them, that's all.
Yeah.
What we're gonna do is probably transfer them over into the new format. But we're just,
But for the time being, that's pretty much off the table. We're just going to focus on.
yeah, we're gonna do it the way it is right now. Which
Okay.
means I'm gonna have to change all that stuff, that language, and fit it into the way this ordinance is laid out right now.
So what we need to do, hopefully
That's what I've
tonight,
gotta do.
is make a motion that the language that we have drafted and agreed upon as a committee go to the planning board ASAP
Right.
as is.
And the planning board will, what the planning board will do with that is then the planning board will recognize that they're not gonna be able to put in the new format zone, we'll have to change the stuff over into the old format. That's all. It's not set up. The only thing that can set it up would be as a conditional use zone. That's the only way I can set it up. It's just,
Yeah,
it's
that's
just,
not as bad as it sounds.
it's not as bad as it sounds.
So
It has to be a
If
special
if the
zone.
sections are already in the current zoning ordinance,
No, they aren't.
They're not.
They're not. It's totally different. See, you guys are trying to put a diesel engine into an MG here. It's not. They're totally different formats.
Gas monkey can do it.
Great. Bring 'em on. It's a technical issue. It's really not your. It's not the. That's not the problem.
Right.
It's my problem, it's not anybody, it's my problem and the planning board's problem. It's not relevant to the issue we're talking about. The issue we're talking about is jumpstarting, getting this stuff done, so that people that we've been waiting for a long time, waiting for this thing to happen, it happens. Now, it's not gonna be pretty, but it's gonna be done, and that's the issue. The issue is to get it in there so it can be acted upon at town meeting.
Okay.
So we'll
And
go
so
to
the
the
formatting
whole
is gonna be my problem, and then cleaning it up afterwards is gonna be my problem, or the planning board's problem. Your problem is to make sure that you pass this language, move it onto the planning board, so they have firm direction saying, okay, this isn't gonna change. These are the definitions of these districts. Okay, now we gotta write the ordinance, which we've already done, because this committee has pretty much followed what the planning board has already written and already done. So you're gonna be following that. You basically give them this and say, okay, no more playing around with the borders, no more playing around with such and such. Deal with this. This is what you got. This is what we're taking to town meeting, and you should have your zoning ordinance in conformance with this that goes to town meeting, because you're gonna go first in the order of sequence. You go first, because the zoning ordinance can't pass unless this passes.
If they don't
If this
pass-
doesn't pass, the zoning ordinance is dead.
then it's all off the table, we
It's
don't
all
even
off the
vote on
table.
that,
So
right.
that's,
And I don't mind doing that. The only problem I personally have is with the DB2. And the question surrounding how the landowners feel about the changes in DB2. Having,
See, and this is exactly why we were trying to separate out the townhouse
This is why
corner,
we wanna
because if you
separate.
get into DB1, DB2, and some of the owners say, no, we don't like it, then townhouse corner
Then you were another
Well,
year.
but
is
then-
out for another year.
But we would know that very shortly when we have that meeting, in which case then we
Right.
just pull DB1 and DB2 out of contention. Then we go
DB2
to,
out, because the issue is
oh, right,
DB2.
then we just go to town meeting with DB1 Gateway and Townhouse Corners.
Okay. I
will lend you rope if you feel you need it, but I want it
Who am I
back
gonna use it
clean.
on?
Your call. I just want it back clean, no fingerprints, no
Okay.
evidence.
but we have to do something. We cannot
Gotta have
continue
some
to
decisions
Yeah, well,
sit and
then,
twiddle our thumbs.
then
and
let's not discuss it anymore, let's do
Motion.
something.
let's just
Let's,
get, then I'll make a motion that we forward the comprehensive plan changes for M1 through M5 to the planning board.
I'll second it.
And that we probably set up the first public hearing.
Well, hold that thought. Any discussion on the motion on the floor? All those in favor?
Okay. Passes. All right. So done.
All right,
Now it's the planning board's problem.
it certainly is.
Make it so number one.
So
I'll make
does
it-
there's a letter that's gonna go to the planning board?
For the February
Yeah, it's gonna be a
27th.
direct order.
It's gonna be a direct order, so I'm sure the agenda's already figured for,
No,
well, actually,
it was
no,
for
you
tomorrow
postponed
night,
that
for the
meeting, so
27th, right?
can it be added to the next agenda?
It's gonna be on next week.
On next week's agenda, it can be added?
Is it next week or 2 weeks now?
It's
2
on the
weeks, forget
27th.
it. Can't do it on the 27th. 27th is gonna be book solid. I got 5 applications. Book solid.
So, but since that meeting got postponed till next week, it can be added to the next week's agenda.
No, next week's agenda is gonna be jammed up even more now, because now I'm gonna have 6 items on the agenda.
So you're telling me at this point, then you can't put this on the agenda for 2 weeks, 2 set meetings?
No, I'm gonna put this on the agenda for next week.
Oh, okay. So you just asked.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I did
can
say
add
that.
it to
Where you
that.
going with this?
Yeah, listen now.
Rewind that.
I thought you said the 27th.
No, I said next week, because you had a meeting tomorrow night planned, and I
No,
know
it's
that it
gonna
could
be-
be on that agenda, but now that you've postponed it to next
We're
week,
going to,
Storm?
yeah, no, the next, I need to get the planning board to start having regular meetings just on zoning. And the next, which means that I'm gonna have a special meeting next week.
And for
Okay.
longer than 2 meetings, because I see yeah, you're gonna do it and then it gets taken up and they're gonna do it and then it gets taken up. We've got it, because we're never gonna get public hearings done.
We're never-
I mean, it's
yeah.
already February.
It's almost
It has to, sorry, it's almost the end of February then. And it all has to be done, signed, sealed, and delivered and ready to be put in the warrants.
Right, it's gonna be done by Public
May?
hearings have to
Public
be done
hearings.
before May.
Public hearings has to be done by May, and who makes the decisions about how many warrants that can be broken up into?
That's really the council, or the selectmen make that decision. On recommendation of the planning board. Planning board makes a
Another meeting.
recommendation to selectmen.
But the planning board can be influenced by hangers-on.
Okay. So, all right, good. So I'll tell the planning board, send out an email, in fact, tonight.
Yeah.
Now, does it do you any good if we drum up any support to come to the planning board meeting?
It always does, yeah,
Always
because
does,
the
okay.
problem is, what happens, as happens with this, is that people are really fired up at first. I mean, we had, all of 14 businessmen, business people at our first DB1, DB2 meeting. And then it stopped. What happens is people go, they hear what they hear, and then they decide whether or not it's a problem, and if it's a problem, they keep coming. If it's not, they don't keep coming. And then they don't show up they won't even show up to the public hearing in many cases. Or they might come up in mass, I don't know. But the more people that are involved in the process earlier on, the better, because then there's pride of authorship. Because then everybody's on the same page, because this is a contract to all the taxpayers. So,
Okay, now should we be thinking about scheduling a public hearing, or do we have to get the planning
no,
board's
to do a public
blessing
hearing,
on this first?
to do the public hearing, the planning board's got to immediately start working on the language. They have the language of DB1 and pretty much all of DB2 done. They stopped doing DB2 until the comp plan committee, was going to firm up the boundaries, and there was concern about whether or not there was support from the comp plan committee on DB2. But they've just gotten it. They've been given their marching orders, so the objective is to finish up DB2. Townhouse Corner was written, as I said, a year and a half ago. They're going to have to take a hard look at that. It's not remarkable. There's nothing really remarkable about it. The lists of uses are probably going to be the issue. The list of conditional uses. They've already gone over that, and they've had that meeting in which we talked about appropriate uses, if you recall. So it's going to be just an issue of them codifying that, going through it and saying, okay, we're all set. This is good, this is not, and then putting it in the final format and then holding a public hearing.
And
What they'll do is they'll do the public hearing for all of them at once.
Yeah.
well, I thought there was also supposed to be another, I thought we were supposed to attempt another meeting with the DB2.
We are. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a different issue.
Okay.
Because what the planning board has to present at the public hearing is the final language that's gonna go on the warrant.
Yes.
So they have to be really done with that. That's gonna take a while. So in the meantime, we have an opportunity to have a meeting with the DB2 people and straighten that out.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and I think that, we'll leave that to you guys and leave the planning board out of that. I think that should be something.
We will invite them.
Let them stay focused, okay?
Okay. Well, I was just gonna say, the other, not that I think other folks showing up for the planning board is a bad idea to push them along in the right direction. However, they're kind of like ravens with a shiny object. They're easily distracted. So, and they have.
This is being recorded, you know.
Yeah, I know, and I sincerely hope that all of them are listening because they know me. They need to stay focused on the language, and the input is valuable and the input is very good, but by the same token, if there's too much distraction, they're never going
They're
to
not gonna
finish.
get it done.
Because, I've been there, done that. So, and yes, I will tell my husband what I said when I get home.
I'm sure he's listening.
He knows.
Good,
He knows.
good.
Okay, so you agree we should let the planning board stay focused and the rest of us stay
I
out
think
of it?
I think you guys should focus on the DB2, building the DB2 support from the property owners, and let the planning board focus on their stuff, because they have to go back and look at Townhouse Corner, re-examine that. They've looked at it once, and they said, okay, but that was the quick brush. This is for real. So they're gonna have to look through that stuff again. And I'm gonna have to whip out the gateway, and that's not gonna be hard because it's pretty much built on DB1. The property owners, I've already talked to almost every single business property owner that I've already talked to. So I'm gonna have no issues with the business property owners. the area is zoned right now business industrial, so the residential property owners probably are not going to be objecting to it either, because it's going to be in some ways a lessening of the types of uses. It's going to be a reduction in the size of the uses there, which is fine because the lots can't take anything bigger than the small stuff that's already been proposed down there. And Champagne's basically shoehorned themselves into their lot, and there's not a lot of room for expansion on any of the other lots. So it's small by its very nature. It's by the lot sizes and by the properties involved. It's a tiny district, so it's not going to be a real issue.
And then the only other one is Community Commercial North, which is M5, and that's going to take a little more work. But if that doesn't get touched now, it doesn't matter.
Well, then
Nothing
that's
happening there
pretty
anyway.
much standalone right now. The
Right.
only thing that these changes is going to increase it from a maximum of 15,000 square feet to 100,000 square
Yeah,
feet.
and it changes the boundaries a little bit on
Changes
the
the
south
boundaries.
side and
Yeah,
well, the north
gets
side.
it out of the residential
Right.
and the subdivisions.
Yeah, but I my guess is going to be the planning board will not have time to address that. In which case, that's not
I don't
likely
think
dead.
they're going to. I don't see how we're going to be able to get that
Yeah.
done because time's out.
So we're really looking at M1 through M4.
M1 through M4, but you've given M5 the go-ahead, and that's important. If they can get to it, they'll get to it.
Yeah.
But I really don't see them doing because they haven't been really focused on it, and M5 would be a good opportunity to then get into the issue of whether we do M6 in a future date.
Yeah.
So
All right,
so 1 through 4.
you good?
Thank you.
We're good. Thank you very much for your time. Appreciate
Thank you
it.
for
Yeah.
coming.
Glad you came.
It's been fun.
As always.
We'll do it again?
And the EDC will be at that planning board meeting. I'm
Yeah.
sure.
You're gonna be there.
Good.
Yep.
Get in the weeds this time, huh?
Yep.
Good.
Gonna stick to them like glue this time.
Good.
But don't distract them.
Don't
I won't
distract
distract
them.
Don't
Go with
worry.
your whips.
Don't wear anything shiny.
Go with your whips.
No sequence.
I'll leave my sequins at home.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Take it easy.
Right.
Okay. Any other discussion on any of that, or are we good? I do have one question.
Sure.
Now that we've approved the language, that's not quite done. You were still going to put in that sentence about existing businesses continue in the general description.
Didn't I do that a long time ago?
I've never seen it. You may have done it, but I've never
I
seen
thought I
it.
gave it to you when I gave you the mixed use
Mm.
definition too.
Well, all right, let's put it this way. If you would be kind enough to send me what it is you have
Okay.
in toto, and I'll take a quick look at it, and if I see any anomalies, I will send that out to everybody else and see if we can resolve those. I think we're good. I just want to make sure, because the last draft I have is draft proposal number 5,
Draft 5, okay.
which was dated December. And that
So
my
is that
copy's
in December, early December?
pre-Christmas December.
Don't even
and
say that.
My copy still has in italics, existing businesses continue, ... and that was your sentence.
Okay. I don't remember the end of this. That's a bad sign.
Well,
Okay.
okay. Do we want to pursue the photo preference survey? I imagine that's going to be a short discussion tonight.
It is. I appreciate a number of people participated and sent me their photographs. Thank you.
I did finally get them.
Yep. And I got some from everybody else, but I have not. I'll tell you honestly, with this 2-week window, I do not have time. I did not have enough time to sort it all out.
Can I would like to have someone make a motion that we table this for the time being.
I'll make that motion.
I mean, not that we can't continue to send photographs in his direction, but it seems to me that there are more pressing issues
Yes.
than that. So, that was a motion, second.
Yes.
All those in favor? That was unanimous,
All right.
okay?
Okay.
All right, proposed letter to landowners. I put together a draft and I sent it to Simone, and she made it a little longer and a little different and sent it back. And I took her suggestions and combined them with some of what I had and changed something else. And this is what this is what we have.
Is that draft 2 or draft 1? I was
It
a
looks
little
like draft
confused
2
about
and a
which
half.
one.
It's-
This is yours? This is since
This
the one
is-
I copied?
I don't know what you have.
The
I'm,
one I passed out. It says draft 2 on it.
It is.
Is it the same one?
I don't even know where that came from.
Simone. She gave it to me to
Oh,
give to you.
cancel that.
Okay.
This is the draft, this is draft 2.1.
Yeah, wait till I talk to her. I saw her at Kohl's last night, and I was joking that we should go shopping at Kohl's instead of coming here tonight, because she did say she wasn't coming.
She's moving into her
Yes,
house.
she's,
I know.
She
lucky
has
her.
actually no water right now.
right, so.
Yeah.
Anyway, this
She'll
was,
have plenty of frozen stuff.
this is a
Yeah.
compilation of her suggestions and what we started with when I wrote mine. And there really wasn't a whole lot of change between one and the next.
I'm just gonna say that the second sentence in the second paragraph,
Yeah.
it just, the intent is to begin to shift the sound. It just seems like it's a little too many twos in there.
To begin to shift.
How about to begin the shift of,
There you go.
intended to begin the shift of the town's tax base.
Yeah, that works better.
Okay.
I'm sorry, no, so how does that read?
The intent is to begin the shift of the town's tax base.
Shift of,
Yeah.
looks good to me.
Alright, so we can do a mail merge on this. Let me get my address sheets.
And were we gonna try to do this on at a comp plan meeting, Donna? Is that what we were gonna try to do?
Yeah, maybe you wanna keep the planning board out of this now, as we discussed. Let you guys run with this one. 'Cause I really don't want them,
Yeah.
Take the
questioning,
call.
I
Absolutely.
don't wanna do this. until we-
Right. Well, I think it's still appropriate to leave them in the letter.
It's good to leave them in the letter.
Yeah.
Just don't
And-
leave them at the meeting. Leave them at the meeting.
You're gonna,
Well, we can tell them about the meeting.
Yeah.
Sure, and if they wanna come, terrific, but, you know, it's
Yeah.
not a meeting that they,
So
Right.
it's not a joint meeting.
I don't want
Don't
to
make it
tie
a
up
joint
their meeting time with
Right.
this because
They don't
they
have
need
enough.
their meeting
They don't
time,
have
right?
enough time.
So, but if they want to come to one of our meetings, that's fine. You know, okay.
Okay.
So strike out Roger Moore and Chairman.
No, no,
Just don't, well, we just won't tell him he's on the letter.
no, we will tell him.
Yes.
No, just instead of having it as a joint meeting officially, but it's still something that's being presented by both groups.
Right, yes,
Hence-
absolutely.
The reference in the letter. And we will invite the planning board to the meeting. But it's not an official joint meeting, nor is it advertised as such in the letter. Okay, now, in terms of when to do this, how about our next meeting, which would be March 4th? Does that give us enough time to get these out?
Yes.
Well, we were gonna do multiple mailings. That was our strategy at the last meeting when we discussed this, was to keep, having this show up in their
Well, today
mailbox.
is the 13th. Send it out. Not sure.
Bad it wasn't
Mail
in
is
time for
going-
Valentine's. You could have put it in a Valentine pink envelope. They might have opened it.
I'm not sure if mail is in operation on the 17th.
No, it's not.
No.
No.
So
But
if you can be
Neither is town hall.
How many people are we gonna send this to?
Well, it's
Approximately. How
30
many?
some odd,
34.
And who's gonna
Because the
send them
Winthrop
out?
people want to play.
town hall.
We've already
Town
heard
hall?
from 3 people that want to play.
Yeah.
The Winthrop, it wasn't a total bust, guys. Remember that.
Right.
The Winthrop people said we want to play.
Yeah.
So they were 1. The Stricklands want to play. There's 2. So there's 3 people right there who say yes,
Yeah.
please.
So we saw it.
So
What are we looking at in March?
Well, the 4th is a possibility. That would be our regular meeting night.
Well, if we get the mailing out by the 18th and do a second mailing on the 25th,
That would work.
Yeah, that's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Is it gonna be, the same letter? I almost think that we should redraft a different one, sort of like a reminder to, I don't know, is it gonna look like the exact same thing?
Wow. This could go out.
you can tell them that the Arundel Historic Society is going to have a bean supper that night.
Yeah, there you go.
And food is free.
That-
For those who leave useful comments.
Is this payback for my thought about your approach to the
I have no
the
idea what you're
ordinance
talking about.
and how it should be written in separate chapters?
You could use.
No,
the
I
same-
like
you could
this.
u- You could,
I just can't make it
I know.
fit.
I know.
you can use
That's
the
my
same letter. I mean, you might put something.
Well, my recollection was, what Todd's suggestion was to do a letter and then follow it up with a postcard for those people who don't actually open envelopes.
Yeah, although I'll tell you, honestly, postcards get chucked. I mean, yeah, we could do that. That's fine. But it has to be something like final notice.
Right,
Mm.
yes.
Yeah, it's got to be like.
The repo guy will be there on the 5th.
If we don't hear from you, Site 9 is being relocated to your
A
property.
neighborhood
Oh,
near you.
jeez.
So again, same wording on a postcard, second, or should
It'll be abbreviated. So
Sure.
we really need
Yeah.
you to come.
second
Be
yes.
there. Door prizes.
So we're gonna
You
send
think
2
I'm
mails.
crazy?
I'm getting
I've
all
done enough
confused.
complaints, I'm telling you. Food and door prizes. Keychains, maps,
Free beer.
free beer
Oh,
is
really?
the best.
That would get me there.
And that
Oh,
works.
okay.
It works. It worked in Waterville. Tell you, the
Free-
fire
free
department
beer
had free
tomorrow.
beer. They did. It worked.
All right,
All
let's
right,
DOL
so
cookies.
Let's
February
do a
18th.
little editing
Yeah.
here. If we were going to reduce this and put it just on a postcard, what parts of this would we put on the postcard?
We need your help, all a part of your parcel, and if you're unable to attend.
If we don't hear from you, we're taking you
Well, we will do whatever we want with it. No, I don't think that's gonna work.
in. They'll get a response.
or just put up at the top like a reminder. I don't know.
Urgent? Say it should have been in car sales.
Final notice or something.
Final notices, it really annoys me when I get those.
Yeah, absolutely.
It's from a car dealer, usually.
That,
Final notice.
that gives me even more reason just to throw it away.
Really?
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Any suggestions here? All right, how about, what if we did the first paragraph and the all or part of your parcel?
We're gonna get, yeah,
And then
you're gonna
please
get,
make an effort again.
And then,
remember, this is a small card.
Right.
Yeah, I know.
This is gonna be 8 point on
Yeah.
this card. So you're gonna be lucky to get 2 paragraphs in there.
well, the first paragraph is nice and short.
Yeah, but I don't think
How
this is
about just
information.
all
Okay.
part of,
Yep.
all part, all of, or part of your parcel, and then make an effort to attend? I mean, if they've got the first letter already,
Yeah,
Instead of putting the whole paragraph, Donna, why don't you just say the Comprehensive Plan Review Committee invites you
there you go,
to a meeting,
one sentence.
and then underneath that, all a part of parcel is included in a proposed new district.
You want to attend.
I think on the
How about
reminder we could also
remind,
just strike out the
thing.
map and lot numbers.
You might not want to because if they have multiple,
yeah, I think
I'm gonna have to fill those in by hand because I can't
Yeah.
You
I,
can't do
I
that
think,
on a
I think
postcard.
that part should stay.
Or,
Well, instead of doing a postcard, why don't we just,
When you
why
come
wouldn't
over
you
to help
just
me.
take this, photocopy them,
And say second notice or something.
and then just put reminder,
Well, yeah,
On
we
it.
were trying to get away from, two different approaches. First one, you gotta open an envelope. And the second one, it's, it's like the dog license reminder card.
Yeah.
Quick and dirty, oh yes, I forgot about that meeting. And I'm gonna be there.
Not only that, I have a tendency to take those little postcards and stick them on my refrigerator.
That's where mine
Whereas
is,
a
yes.
letter,
Yeah,
I have somewhere.
yeah.
So that's.
How about something real short and sweet, like, this is a
Mm-hmm.
reminder that the CPRC will be holding a public hearing on such and such a date regarding rezoning of a section of the town in which your property is located.
Too much.
This affects you.
I just,
Please show up.
that works.
That's
And I just say rezoning, the town is considering, considering a new zone that will rezone your land.
Yeah.
You really would like, we think it's important that you come and give us your input. Be there at blah, blah, blah date. Any questions, call Todd Shea.
You wanna throw that in a paragraph and email it to me tomorrow
Yeah,
morning?
yeah.
Okay, thanks. All right.
Make it very, very,
yeah,
I think that's
very
it.
short,
Yeah.
very short.
All right, so our meeting is going to be held on
March
March 4th at 7 p.m.
And before we do that, we're gonna make sure the school, we have to talk to Mary Lou and make sure we got a space because we got kicked out tonight, as you know.
Well, tonight's not our usual night anyway, so I guess that.
it was
Well, that
tech
doesn't
night.
mean.
It's a
I know.
We still gotta
School
look at-
events take precedence because we don't own the building anymore. So, all right, okay, so we're good with this for the first one, and then,
You want
Rock and roll from the
And you probably
Well,
could have
I-
met in their little board meeting room,
No, it was full. We tried that.
really.
Yeah. Because we had an EDC meeting last night. We had a meeting the board because there were kids running all through the library. So, we met in that little room. That was fun. But we said that to Mary and she said, no, everything's taken. Everything is taken. That's why we're here. In violation of ADA.
What a nice place to meet.
I like it. It makes it so much easier.
it's almost like candlelight and wine.
It is.
So,
There is
what do we do?
We got in the bottle.
You never know what's in the
We'll
open
have to get a
air.
48-inch doors
Yeah,
instead
I'm
of
not
36.
intimidated by ADA anymore. After the newest one, it's like, there's nothing about obesity that's ADA.
All right, so we're all set with that, and approved strategy, we kind of just did that. It was,
Yeah.
one letter, one postcard, and after that, if you have a complaint, call somebody who cares. Yes, sir.
I would like to make a motion that we adjourn for this evening.
Do I hear a second? All those in favor?
Don't knock each other over.
Not that it hasn't been done.
Is it all packed in your bags?
Who seconded that? Who wants to take credit
Everybody seconded it.
for it? You're gonna give it to Diane?
Yeah, Diane,
Okay, Diane gets
stand
it.
up first, I think.
Go pack the stuff.
Why is it done? It's Diane. Sean.
I saw your,
I'm feeling good tonight.
okay, what else? Kind of,
I hope it's
Nice.
insinuations.
Nice picking up on the side. Would anybody be interested in copies of this old house data?
I think that should be disseminated to everybody. I didn't know we had that resource. That's a great resource. And it's a great start.
Yeah.
That's a great start to the.
I'll make a bunch of copies for our next meeting.
Sometimes it's
Just one, my suggestion for the legend part,
No, the other one.
okay.
where we have all the names and addresses and map and lots.
Oh, really?
So she has
If it was organized by map and lot numbers.
All right, so, see, this is simply a copy that I have. I don't have the original on file anywhere.
So she
Simone
at
might.
the EDC meeting last night, she was.
That's the only thing
pulled
that-
out the
Because
numbers
just
happening.
looking at the
She's
property,
one who kinda got
or
this,
the map,
Good.
and it's just got the map and lot number,
Gotta get off.
then it's kinda.
I understand, but see, as I said, I just got a copy of it and went from there and made the map.